So at a time and age where most people can only really make a good income if it's in some way or form online. And yes, I understand that in many countries in the world, it is possible to make a very good amount of income in real life situations locally. But unfortunately, due to political issues sometimes and sometimes due to environmental conditions, it is not really possible in most countries to make an income locally. And that is why many people have now resorted to trying to find ways to make money online. And while the media is one way to do this, not many people really feel comfortable working in media-related positions, in addition to the fact that some people just might not be able to do it because of, say, restrictions of one form or another. Not to mention that working in the media does involve a lot of luck, and that is not something that most people can risk. So a slightly more stable way of making online is usually through programming. And while basic programming still has its place in society, and by no means is small, it's just that the competition is much higher in basic programming than it was any time before. However, a new opportunity has been rising, and it is something that many people are fighting for a place in, and that is machine learning, where rather than basic simple ways of making decisions of like if statements and so forth and switches, machine learning allows a completely different perspective about how to get data, to acquire it, and to analyze this data and use it. And this is a whole universe of its own, and you will often hear these terms being thrown around such as deep learning or neural networks, and most people don't really understand what they mean. Personally, I came across the term neural networks for the first time around 2 years ago. I was writing a research paper, and I didn't really understand what it meant. It was my first time seeing it, and it wasn't exactly about programming. It was about the fact that the project had used these neural networks to analyze their data somehow. And that is when I understood that so much of today's technology is deeply rooted in machine learning. So even if, say, you don't want to be a professional in machine learning itself, it still can have amazing impacts on your career in general, or even say you want to become an entrepreneur of sorts and not actually have to do the engineering work, it would still help for you to actually understand what the engineers are actually doing. And a great way to learn about this is, of course, from an expert in the field, which is not really myself. It's actually Andrew NG. And this professor offers one of the best courses in the world when it comes to machine learning. And the best thing about this is that it's a free course. But it's not just so great because it's free. It genuinely is truly one of the best courses out there. And it really can compare and in some ways be better than the actual course that he does teach in Stanford University. Not to mention that this course was actually incredibly popular even when it was not free. And it truly is an amazing course because it has this really nice learning curve that is quite gradual and really helps students progress. And it does this starting from the very basics. And when I say basics, I mean it actually starts with the mathematics behind it. And that is something that most people are oftentimes unaware of. People oftentimes think of programming as just writing lines of code which are in basic English, but in reality, it is a lot of mathematics. So basically, the course would start with a simple introduction, and later on, it would move on and start to talk about things related to linear algebra, and it would help you start to learn things about certain functions to predict actual outputs, such as maybe related to costs. So you're creating real outputs from the given inputs. And it does go over linear regression, both with one variable and multivariable. And even if this is confusing for you right now, do not worry. He will help you as much as he possibly can, in addition to the fact that you can find some other online resources. But if you have absolutely no idea, it would help to go and check out some other courses. And you can do these through channels such as Patrick GMT, which is a channel that I really benefited so much from during my early years in engineering, to another channel that I benefited a lot from, and I think his name was Professor Leonard. And of course, there's the well-known Khan Academy. And if you really need help with the very basics, I do remember that there was this channel. It was a girl from Harvard, I believe, and it was called Maths BFF. She definitely helped me a lot in the very beginning. But of course, you don't really need to go through all these people. These are all different suggestions if you need some extra help. But as I said, the course does help you with most of the basics. And of course, after going through the mathematics, there will also be some tutorials about Octave and MATLAB. And yes, these aren't the ones used so much in the industry today. However, it's important to develop a basic understanding because this course isn't meant for you to just copy and paste whatever it is that you learned into whatever job that you plan to acquire. But rather, it's about understanding the basic concepts and ideas behind it, the real roots and what happens behind those libraries. And as a result of this, you will be able to work with more complex and new problems because you have a true basic understanding. And that also means that in the case of, say, job interviews, you have a better chance than many other applicants because a lot of times with these jobs, you will be faced with interesting questions. And if you don't really have a good understanding as to the how and why, you can miss out on incredible job opportunities. So it definitely does pay to really understand. But of course, once you do start in the industry, you will be using high-level frameworks, which will not require you to actually go back to the very basics and Octave and so forth. But of course, that doesn't mean that the programming here isn't high level. In fact, you will learn a lot of things about how, say, the email service that you use, how does it differentiate between spam or not spam? And it even goes into graphical analysis and understanding regularization and how to avoid things such as overfitting. And once you're done with that, then it goes on to the most interesting part, the part that got me interested into this field, which is those neural networks. And as the name implies, these were actually inspired by how our brain works. And these neural networks are behind the workings of voice-activated commands, like, say, Siri, for example. I forgot the name of the one on Google. I think it's just called Google Voice. And of course, this goes without saying that the course does start to talk about how these concepts and ideas are actually applied in the industry. And that's incredibly important. This is something that you should pay close attention to if, as we said, you are looking for a career in this. And when we are talking about careers, it's important to consider things such as machine learning system design. And this will better help you understand about the performance of your system and how to optimize it. And once you're done with that, you will move on and talk about support vector machines, which I will not get into too much right now, because this is something that for many students, you do need to take the course before understanding what they're actually about. And then we will move on and learn about unsupervised learning. And that's something to take into consideration because we often hear things about certain algorithms, such as the YouTube algorithm, and how it is learning with time. We understand that these systems have their own algorithms set in place and they do develop and improve with time. And they of course do this by building models that help us learn more about our data. But another issue that we often have with data is that it oftentimes has a lot of dimensions. And that is the thing that we will move on to next. And that would be to learn more about dimensionality reduction and how to compress the data. But whenever we modify the data and when we just analyze it in general, we will often find anomalies. And that is something that would also be moved on to in the 9th part of the course. And this is to help us figure out which data points exactly vary a bit too much from the average, say. Because let's say you're using your computer every single day. And one day a friend comes over and he borrows your computer for a bit and he goes onto some websites and does some things that you never do before. That shouldn't affect your history as much because it is still an anomaly. It's not something that happens on a regular basis. It's a bit too different from the regular data that you have provided. But of course, regardless of that, you will still usually find some sort of advertising that will pop up on your screen instantly as soon as you or someone else has maybe entered a specific keyword into the search box or maybe just sent a message. And that is done by recommender systems. And that is something else that will be taught in this course in the 10th part. And this is not just done on a minor scale, but later on the course will move on and talk about the larger system scale machine learning. Finally, you will understand the point of having all these annoying prove that you're not a robot sort of challenges, let's say, because you will learn about how systems work to identify certain texts and images. And that is why oftentimes in these prove that you're not a robot challenge, you will find that the letters or numbers that you're supposed to find are so obscure, even you can't tell them apart. And now I get if you have found a lot of what I've said quite obscure and confusing, because to be honest, I don't really have much of an understanding of it either. All I'm trying to do is to help you get access to someone who does. And this Andrew NG has an amazing course And he is truly the person to go to if this is something that you want. And he started in this field from a very young age. He started doing some sort of internships at the age of 16, I think, at the National University of Singapore. And he later moved on to a bachelor's at Carnegie Mellon University, and then did his master's in MIT. And almost finally, he did his PhD in Berkeley. Truly finally, he is now a professor at Stanford University, and he does actually work with clients in the industry. So if you do go through all his courses and maybe get to know him on a personal basis, he is definitely a great asset, one of the best minds in the field. But before you start making any such decisions, you should go and check out the course first, and it is linked in the description box down below. And the course has amazing quizzes and assignments that you can do, and these will truly help you and get some experience, perhaps, even though it's not that realistic of experience, because a lot of the things that you'll be required to do in the industry require lots of data acquisition and cleaning of the data, things that just aren't covered well enough inside of this course, because this is just an introductory course. But you will come across amazing people inside the discussion forum, and these guys can really help you along your way if you get stuck at any point, or if you develop a better understanding than any of them, you can maybe help out in this discussion forums. Not to mention that you can maybe make friends within these discussion forums that can help you get access to amazing opportunities. But even if nothing at all, at least it is a very fun and a quite challenging course for many people, and it has a lot of puzzles that are really entertaining. So even if you have the slightest inclination to work in anything related to machine learning, or if this is something that you have learned before and would like to have a small recap, this is definitely the course for you. But of course, taking just this course won't exactly make you an expert. You do need to learn a lot more. You can do this either by joining a university or maybe by taking more courses and learning from internships and other sorts of experience. However, this course alone can possibly help you get access to some freelance opportunities related to AI and machine learning. And depending on your personal financial situation and the financial situation of your area, this can actually be a lucrative job. But if you really do want to make a job out of it, I do recommend that you check out other courses in my online courses playlist. Or if you really think that you cannot really learn without the guidance of a university, in that case, you can go ahead and check out my scholarship playlist. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments down below.